everybody, welcome to my channel. For me, it is a Sunday afternoon and I have pretty much spent my day making beads. I did my power walk this morning and did a little bit of cleaning, and I've spent my day making beads. Now these beads I did in another video. I used some nuts and bolts and ferrites and washers and turned like garage hardware into beads in that video. And if you didn't see it, I'll link that video because I'm going to use these when I'm all done making this batch of beads. I'm going to use these and these to make a necklace, mixed media, colorful, boho, and just really sweet. So what I did with these beads is did simple loops with 20 gauge wire going through. So I'll go ahead and do my last one. I put a simple loop in this end, and then I'm just going to feed my 20 gauge wire through my bead. I've been using my 2 1/4 millimeter one-step looper for all of my loops, but you can totally do these loops with your pliers if you like to do them that way. When I have a lot of components to make, I like my one-step looper. It really saves my hand, but I like the consistency that I get to. So those 3 are ready. And then let me show you my beads, my sample beads. And you guys, this is addictive. I sat down to make these and I was going to do 1 or 2 just to show you where we're going with the project, but I got carried away. Look how gorgeous these are. So I'll show you all the ingredients that go into these beads, and you know what I've pulled from my stash. But look at the little ones. Aren't they adorable? They're so fun to make and they are so easy. You literally cannot mess these up. Okay, so what I started out with are my felt beads, and I have all different sizes and colors here. I'm gonna do a few beads with you. I've already chosen the different sizes, and so we're gonna do those together. What I have here is just some dyed shell hearts, and these are left over from my Potomac treasure box this month. These are some agate little rondelles, and I'll just set these aside, but I also had these left over from my dollar bead box last month, and I am kind of thinking that I'm going to do a beaded chain for the front of my necklace with all of my handmade beads, and then I'm going to do the back part of it as a strung, really colorful but really petite kind of a beaded chain. Strung chain is what I meant to say. So I'll set those aside, and then let me show you what else. I have just a variety of 11/0 seed beads here. I have some of my tiniest bead caps that I had in my stash, and like these tiny little ring spacer beads and the tiny little daisy spacers that I had. These are just things that I had in my stash that were really small because I knew the sizes of the beads I was going to be working on. So let me show you what some of those are. The little bead caps, the tiny little bead caps, those can be embellishments on a bead. The tiny little daisy spacers look like this with an 11/0 seed bead in the middle. What else is here? These are those agate rondelle beads that make an embellishment with a gold seed bead holding that down in the middle. And my thread, or my oh, here's the little rings with an 8/0 seed bead sewn in the middle. And then these beads are just super easy because you really just fill up the felt bead with seed beads and string them up. Oh, I have to show you this too. Look what else I found in the felt bead universe. Aren't these amazing? And I have started like some turkey tracks on this one, and I'm going to show you my embroidery floss is just, if you cross stitch or DMC embroidery floss, just in a variety of colors, but I actually am using my scraps because these little beads do not take much, so I'm actually using my scraps. And then I just have a variety of bead caps out here because I like to go ahead and complete my beads. So I've just gone into my stash. These were left over from my Dee Dee's Deluxe bead box, just little opaque rondelles. I think this was my collaboration, in my collaboration box that I did with Dee Dee Beads. So those are just some of the things that I pulled out to complete my beads. like I said, bead caps. This one, instead of a bead cap, I stacked some wavy disc spacers. This one I did some discs, some, you know, a little disc as the end instead of a bead cap. So just having fun with them, filigree bead caps and some flower bead caps. And so really just having fun with how to finish them. I like to finish off my beads this way. I like to finish them off with a bead cap and go ahead and have them ready. Now, I have poked my wire through and done simple loops. So every bead is a component that is ready to create into a beaded chain. But if you don't want to do it with the wire going through, I will link another video. These are my other beads that I've made. So this is one video where these are fabric covered beads that I've done with a wooden base and the bead caps and wooden rings. These are sari silk ribbon wrapped wooden rings, and look at this gorgeous little pendant. I just love it. And then these are the nuts and bolts and washers and ferrites and cylinders and things from my garage. So this is one video, this is another video, and this is another video. But I did do some embellishment on these felt beads for this design. And it has some cup chain on it. It has some, this one has some flowers and some sequins and some stitching. So this is, you know, a little bit different way to embellish the felt beads. But on this one, I strung these beads. So there's no wire going through these. So if you want to, if you prefer to do it that way, like I strung the felt beads going right into the chain part of this one. So if you want to do it that way, it's totally doable, but I decided to change it up since I've already done different bead videos. You guys seemed really interested in it, and I promised that I would show you all the different ways. So I still have to do paper beads, and I have a very old video on how I do my boho beads with a straw, a paper straw as the core. But these are, you know, my newer versions of making beads. So on this one, since I, pardon me, I have to reach behind me. Since I had already strung these, you know, like a strung bead, I decided to make components out of this one. So the way that I start that is with a piece of 20 gauge wire, and I have taken my cutters and at a very sharp angle like that, I have almost made like a little spear. Be so careful that you don't hurt yourself because this is extremely sharp. Let me move some of my gorgeous beads out of the way, and let's do this one first. So I'm going to take my spear part and poke it through my felt and just try to get it right through the middle. So I can see that I'm offset, so I'm going to just play with this a little bit until I feel like I have my bead centered on a piece of 20 gauge wire. Okay, that's pretty good. A few tries, and I'm just looking, so since there is no channel or core in a felt bead, you sort of have to create a visual, especially for your embellishing. Now I have two, if you're familiar with embroidery or cross stitch, then you know that this embroidery floss comes with 6 individual strands that are wound into one, and usually you would separate this for cross stitch to 2 strands, sometimes 3. But I'm using the entire thing because I really want it to show up on my bead. So I'm also have a couple of needles going here. What you will need are either an embroidery needle, a chenille needle will give you a bigger needle eye if you want to use all 6 strands. You can also use a darning needle. Just keep in mind that you need this, whatever needle you use, to be pretty firm because you have to pull it through a felt ball. And you also just need to be able to thread it because you have all these strands that have to go in. So I usually wet my tip a little bit, and even the trick of, like, it's cotton, so it's not going to thread the way our bead stringing does, but you can still flatten it and kind of help yourself to get it through the eye of your needle. And so the other thing I'm going to do on this, and this is really your preference, I'm going to take a Sharpie marker and I'm going to just put a little mark where the center of my bead is, top and bottom. So then you can pull this off of the wire if you prefer to work with it off the wire. And I'm going to put a really small knot in the bottom here. Just really, really small. And so I chose the bead caps ahead of time, because if you want to go ahead and put your bead cap on, it tells you like where your knot can sit and be hidden, and also where you might want to start your design. So what I'm going to do on this bead is really the easiest, and even though it's the easiest, it's one of my favorites. I'm just going to kind of make some fluting around the bead with my embroidery floss, and then I'm going to fill in between with some little seed beads. So I kind of have a visual here. I have the bead cap that I've chosen. So I'm going to come right through the top here and just kind of come out. And that's just to start me off. And my little knot that I made is going to hide under the bead cap. I can get rid of the tail just to make sure it doesn't poke through my bead cap. And so now I'm just going to, actually I can pull my wire out on this one. I won't poke myself that way. So I'm just going to lay my embroidery floss and come back up to the top and poke my needle through. I think what I did before to get it even is I went back down, and then I'm going to come, you can really come out wherever you want, but I'm going to come back down to this side. And I'm just coming out so that what I'm doing here will hide under my bead cap. And I'm just going to pull. And then I'm going to lay my embroidery floss over so that I'm even with my other stitch, and I'm going to poke in and go back to this side and come out there. And pull. And I'm not pulling really, really hard because I want my embroidery floss to lay on top of the felt and really be seen. And I'm just going to continue like that. I'm coming out the top. I'm going to lay my floss down in the middle of those two and poke back through and just pull. You keep pulling it back and pushing until you come out right where you want to. And I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm just going to continue all the way around until I have as many little melon slash, like the fluting, it's embroidered like fluting, and so I'm just going to keep doing that, just coming out where my next line will be. Now if you want to, you can take a Sharpie marker and make little faint lines on your beads for your stitches. I did do that on this one. This is a back stitch running around the center of this bead, and I actually started with a little line, just to give myself a visual, and then I did the back stitch all the way around, and then I went back with another color of floss and did my loops in and out, and then I went back with another thread. And oh, I was going to tell you the second thread, speaking of that, I have a number 10 beading needle, like what we would do peyote stitch with, threaded with some 10-pound pink wildfire, beetle on wildfire. And for the knot on this one, I just come to the end here, just come to the end, and I'm going to take my fire starter and just melt the end. And so it makes a little, let me go again, makes a little, so you can see it, it makes a little ball, a little like melted ball on the end. And so when I go back to add my seed beads in between my fluting, this will just, you know, grab right into the felt. So that needle is ready, and I'm just going to continue until I have all of my, as many stitches as I want, as many, you know, you can do like just 4, you can do 6, you can just keep going until you're happy with the look. I'm just going to run my needle under here and just kind of secure it like that and snip. And now I am ready for my number 10 beading needle and my wildfire and adding in my seed beads. So I'm just going to poke through where it will hide under the bead cap and just come out wherever I want to start, and I'm going to start filling my bead up with seed beads. You can kind of move your fluting if you want to. And I think on this one I'm going to do, what am I going to do? Gold, and do I want to do all gold? What have I done here? This one I did gold and green. This one's pink and purple and gold. So maybe I'll pop some green on this one as well. I did a tiny bit of green in my color story here. It's just so fresh and pretty. So all you're going to do is poke your needle back through the felt ball just right next to where you came out after you've added the seed bead, and then come out anywhere you want, really. I went section by section so that I could have a look at, you know, how things were laying. So I'm just going to poke my needle back through and come out where I want to do another bead. I'll pick up a green this time. Go down right where right next to where I came out, and just pull. And I'm just going to fill, maybe I'll do some of these, how do these look? Yeah, some of these darker pink as well. You can have so much fun with your colors and your patterns. I've done every single bead different. I'm going to come out. That's where too, when your needle is coming out near the top, you can put your check with your bead cap to see it's a little bit too close to where the bead cap will be. So I'm going to pull it back a little bit, and that kind of keeps me on track. That section is done, and I'm just going to go all the way around, filling up my sections with seed beads. Okay, this is my last one, and I'm going to poke my needle back up here through the top and tie off. Just do a half hitch knot. I don't want to get my flame starter, my fire starter in here close to my cotton thread and my felt ball like I started with on the wildfire, but just do a little knot that's going to hide underneath the bead cap. Just like that. And I can thread zap. Look at that. Isn't it so cute? And it just gets better when you add the bead cap. So now I'm going to take my little spear that I made with my 20 gauge wire and find that black mark that I made for the center of the bead and poke my 20 gauge wire through, aiming for the black dot, the center on the other side. Got it. And I'm just going to come to this end. I did this a little bit backwards, but I'm going to put my bead cap on, and right here I'm going to grab my one-step looper and work hard in that loop and bring my bead and my bead cap down, and then I'm going to pop the bead cap on this other side and get my one-step looper in here again. And on the felt beads, you can push really hard up against the front jaw. And I have decided that I'm going to connect everything with jump rings, so I'm just straightening out my loops and work hardening. But that is, to me, that is the cutest, happiest, sweetest little bead. I just love it. So I still have my spear on this side, and what I'm going to do for this next one, this little tiny one, it's really the same thing, but I'm using these discs instead of bead caps. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pop a simple loop in this end. I'm going to feed on one of my discs, and then I'm going to, no need to make a mark on these little tiny ones. I'm just going to eyeball it and poke right through the center, and I actually got that one really great first time out of the gate. And I'm going to come right here with my top disc spacer, and I'm going to do the same thing with a simple loop on this end. I'm going to push really, you can see how they squish into the tool. And then when your loop is in and you take the tool away, you have a really nice, tight, simple loop on this bead. Just going to close it really well and work hard in it. So that little bead is done, the bead part. And I'm going to come back and do the same thing again. I'm going to melt my end to make a little bead, little ball. It makes a little like melted ball on the end. And then I'm just going to come underneath. I'm going to run my needle underneath that disc and just come out wherever and pull. And that's going to pull that little ball, that melted ball, underneath my disc. And now I'm ready to embellish. So you can see from here that I've done on some of these, I've done these little daisy spacers. On these little small ones, they look great with just the seed beads, but on this one I think I want to try a little something different. I did try something different on this one, but I was thinking of doing a 11-0, and maybe I'm going to put green as a stopper bead a gold 15-0. Just put a few out here and see how that looks, just for a little bit more texture. So I'm going to pick up that 15-0 and feed it down to my green, and then I'm going to skip over the 15-0 and go back through the 11-0 and just come out where I want to do my next little stack. Look how cool that is. Just a little bit of extra dimension, and maybe I'll do purple and alternate purple and green on this one. I could also try even an 8-0. I have not tried an 8-0 seed bead on these smaller felt beads. So, and I have some right here. Let me poke through right there. And the more you fill these up, the better they look. Let me try that with an 8-0. Okay, that is my last one. So again, I'm going to come out underneath my disc where I can just tie a half hitch knot underneath my disc. Oh, look at that adorable little bead. I just love these. They make me so happy, and I've been like, I just get more and more creative with every single bead. So it sort of increased the size and the look of this one a little bit to do all the different sizes of seed beads, the 8/0 and then the 11/0 topped off with a 15/0. But aren't they so sweet and fun? I just love them. Okay, let's do our next bead. I'm going to do on this one a bit of a sunburst, I guess, like on both ends. And so I'm going to do the same exact thing. I have a knot in this end, and I'm going to thread my needle. Spear, so really sharp angled cut. And like I said, be very careful that you don't hurt yourself because it's quite sharp. I'm not even going to hold my finger over it. I'm going to hold it with pliers just to make sure that I don't cut myself. And make it nice and straight. And I'm going to do the same thing on this design. It's really important that I'm going to have to make this even more sharp. On this design, it's really important that you know your center, because I'm going to work with that center for my stitching. So I'm going to poke up through. These felt balls are so dense. You have to sort of find a spot to get through. That actually looks really good. Sometimes I leave the wire in, and sometimes I find it's in my way, and I'll pull it out of the bead and then put it back in when I'm finished stitching and embellishing. But once you make that mark, then that's, it's easy to do. And so what I'm going to do is kind of similar to how we did the fluting on this one. I'm going to start at the top again because this is going to be my bead cap for this one, so I can put that on as a visual. And so I'll have plenty of space to hide knots underneath. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to come almost to the middle of the bead, not quite to the middle of the circumference. And that's going to be my first, that's going to be my longest strand. And then I'm going to lay this, in fact, I will pull my spear out. I'm going to lay this across and poke back through, and I'm going to come out on this other side. And I'm going to get 4 almost to the middle. I'm putting my needle in almost to the middle, and I'm going to come over here. So I'm looking at my center, and I want 1, 2, 3, 4 sun rays, I guess we can call it, to start off with. So I'm going to lay that on there and poke my needle in almost to the middle and come back out on what will be my 4th one. And then poke back in almost to the middle, and I'm going to come up at the top in between my 2 longer in between my 2 longer stitches. And on this one I'm going to go shorter. I'm going to go kind of in between the 2. I'm going to poke my needle in. So if you can see what I'm doing, I'm laying my thread, I was going to say cord, my thread so that I can see where I'm going, and then I'm going to come right back up to the next, come out in between the next two and just pull. So see how that one's a little bit shorter? That's the goal. And I have to say, like, I do silk ribbon embroidery, and this is just not super serious embroidery. It's very forgiving. It's really fun. When I'm doing regular embroidery, I may be working with a shadow pattern, or I've penciled in like where my feather stitch or my blanket stitch or whatever I'm doing is. But on these, I just eyeball it because they're really fun. They're quite small. You're not able to come up from behind the way you would if you were embroidering with an embroidery hoop. You have to kind of finagle your stitches because you have to poke through a bead. So it's really fun, and they turn, even when they're off a little bit, they just turn out so great. Like this one is definitely, my back stitch is definitely not perfect, even though I put a line on it, but they just look so great. They're just so embellished and so boho, and they have this amazing textile quality. And I love mixing the textile quality with the thread, with the glass beads, with the wire and the metal bead caps or the metal spacers. Like the mixture of all the things. These beads that I made in the other video are done with ballerina silk or ballerina cord. I don't believe it's silk, but it feels like a silky ribbon. The mixture of all the textures and finishes is absolutely delicious. Okay, so stop talking, Joey. Last one. I'm going to come to in between my longer. So what that gave me is 8 stitches with 4 that are longer and 4 that are shorter in between. And that just gives me a really cool little spot to embellish. Now I'm going to poke back through and come to this side and do exactly the same thing. I'm going to come to my longer, I want my longer one to be sort of lined up with the longer one on the other side. I can show you one of these patterns that I've done. Where is it? This one. That's what I did here. So where the longer ones are lined up on this bead, and then I've embellished the end, it gives me a space in between every one of my sunburst to add another embellishment. I did those little I guess they're quartz, dyed quartz, or yeah, probably dyed quartz. I don't remember actually, but it's a little gemstone donut, and that's what I did on that one. So I'm going for the same thing here. So I'm going to pull this out on the other end of the bead, and I'm going to match up my long. This is my longer one, but I want to leave a little space, so I'm not quite poking my needle back into the middle of the bead. And then I'm going to come out directly on the other side, which should line me up with another long stitch. Okay, my stitching is done, and I'm going to come back. Going to do the same thing again to my Beadalon Wildfire and melt a little bead on the end another time, and embellish this with seed beads. And I'm going to think of something for the center of my bead. I think I might even go back to the bead caps for the center. Add my seed beads in, and then I'll show you what I decide for that. So I'm just going to poke my number 10 beading needle through the top, and I'm coming out one of my shorter stitches. And so my little ball that I melted is a nice little stopper. And then I think here I'm going to do an 8/0. I'm going to do an 8/0 pink chalk seed bead. And I'm going to pop one gold 11/0 in the middle and go back down right beside where I came out and get my needle over to my longer stitch. And here I'm going to pick up 3 gold 11/0s. And I'm going to put my needle back down right beside where I'm coming out, and I'm going to skip over to all-in-one stitch to the end of my next shorter stitch. But when I pull those 3, it makes like a little gold picot, and I'm going to continue that way with every other stitch, getting one of these bead embellishments. Okay, and I'm going to come out right here in this empty space and decide what I want to put here. And like maybe, do I want to do one of these little tiny bead caps? So I'm going to pop on one of these bead caps, and then I think I'll use, let's see if a green will show up as my stopper bead. That's pretty. So I'm gonna do the same thing, not go through that green bead, and I'm just gonna come out where I want my next bead cap to be. Okay, all the stitching is done on this one, and same thing, I'm gonna put a simple loop, get my wire and my bead caps on, and this will be done. Look how beautiful that is. I just love these little beads. Look how beautiful this one turned out. I just love these beads. I love all of them. They're so fun and so gorgeous. Okay, I was going to show you, I don't really want a pendant on this necklace, but I was going to show you what I'm doing here with the turkey tracks. So when I'm coming out of the stitch above like that, I'm going to come, this one was off to the left, so I'm going to come right across from where I came out, and I'm going to go at an angle down. And like I said, if you're doing actual embroidery, you would have either 4 lines or 3 lines so that you have like a little faint line, but I am just eyeballing this, and I'm on top of my thread, and so when I pull this, it's forming the next little turkey track. And then I'm going to poke down through right beneath where that stitch is coming out and go over here to the opposite side that I just came out. And when I pull, I just tacked down my little turkey track, and then same thing, I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to come out right at the point of my heart. Like I said, this is, if you're really good at embroidery, then this probably looks weird to you, but I just find that on the stitches that are on felt beads, that I just have to be creative with where my needle goes. So here's my little loop, and I wasn't good about getting it underneath the needle. So before I pull, I'm just going to pull that down like that. And this will be my last one. So here I'm going to poke through just beneath where my other stitch is, and I've already poked my wire in so that I can see. I'll put some kind of a bead cap or a disc or something there so I can pull this. Well, I pulled my thread around my wire. So that's my little feather stitch or turkey tracks. Like, you can really do whatever stitches you would like. And like I said, I love these hearts. I was playing with these hearts, and what I think I'm going to do with them is do a bookmarker, to have it hanging off of one end of a bookmarker. But I want to embellish further. I want to do something around the edge, something really pretty around the edge. So I just thought I would show you a few embroidery stitches. I have a book that I've had forever with all the different really cool embroidery stitches: running stitch, back stitch, the bullion stitch. There's so many, and they're so fun. And you can also get your silk ribbon out for silk ribbon embroidery. I have shown you guys how to do that in a video over a year ago. I made a brooch, but these would make really cute brooches as well. But I'm going to use some of these same techniques to embellish. I'm going to do some kind of a little frilly edge with seed beads. I'll show you. I'll either come back in another video for finishing this one, and maybe this one as well, or I'll pop up some pictures if I do it. But right now I'm really concentrating on my necklace. So I'm going to set all of these threads and all these things aside. I am going to need to make some jump rings, so I'm going to grab a length of my 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to get my bail making plier in here and make some jump rings. Where's my blunt cut? Right there. I'm gonna just make a little coil here. And I'm just going to come with the flush side of my flush cutter, and I'm going to snip one ring at a time up that coil. And I'll probably have to make more than this because I think I'm going to connect 2 jump rings per bead. I really love the look of that. Okay, that will start me off, and I have to decide on my pattern. And so I think I'm going to put one of these beads in the middle. Okay, I'm going to have a few beads left over. I just had so much fun making beads, and I can see that I'm for sure going to need more jump rings than what I made, so I'll use up what I have here. But I'm going to start connecting. As I said, I have work hardened all of my simple loops as I was making the beads in this order that I've laid out here. I had to take a break, you guys, and make some dinner. I have been so enthused and inspired and fascinated by these beads that I sat here for hours and hours and hours without getting up. So it gave me a chance to think about how I want to finish my piece. Everything is connected with double jump rings at every connection. And I did decide that I'm going to use this twisted stainless steel jump ring with this really cool glass ring that is square. It's not a ring, it's a square, glass square. I found these on Dollar Bead Club, their website, and I just really love like all the textures and shapes, and like I said, the finishes that I was talking to you guys about earlier. And then what I have out here is what I'm going to work with to make the body of my necklace. And I'm not going to do a clasp on this. I love the ease of a necklace to pop over my head. And I have this beautiful color of my Soft Flex bead stringing wire. It's the 49 strand, and this is the pink rhodochrosite color. And it is just absolutely perfect and delightful for this piece. I'm also going to use my Soft Flex gold filled number 2 crimp tubes, and I will need 2 of those. And this is not really rocket science, but I think it's going to be really pretty because I want to do kind of a bold seed bead loop that connects on either side here. And then I'm going to work with what I have. These are left over from my Potomac Beads treasure box for the month of October, and my seed beads. These were Dollar Bead Club's box, Dollar Bead box and bag from last month. I think these were September, so I just kind of pulled out my leftovers, and the hearts that I showed you earlier are from the craft store, and now I'm not even sure if I want to use them. I don't know. I've left them out here in case I wanted to do like a little line of them. When I start stringing and see how it's going to look, then I'll make that decision. So I'm going to put my number 2 crimp tube on my bead stringing wire, and I'm going to do a pretty large loop. I'm going to alternate the gold and the pink chalk and just alternate them, and I'm going to put 15 seed beads on. So that's 3, 4, 5. So I have my 15 seed beads on, and I'm going to come to my square, which is actually not going to hang like a square. It's going to hang like a triangle. It's just gravity is going to do that. And I'm going to pull my seed beads inside and get my crimp tube over my cut in, so forming the loop but inside that glass triangle. And I'm just going to pull tight. So my transition from my handmade beads and beaded chain into my stringing part is going to look like that. I'm going to do the same thing on both sides, and I really love my magical crimping plier here because it looks like a little seed bead, and it's just a really pretty transition. So I'm going to fit the number 2 crimp tube squarely in the single divot. Don't close down until you feel that you're really in the center, and I can still feel that I'm not in there. This is like riding a bicycle. It just slipped in. Once you know what it feels like when it's in the right position, you'll get it right every time. And when I close down, the tube now looks like a square with 4 pinched corners. And now I'm going to do the same thing in the opposite direction. Do not close the tool. I feel that it's in the center, and then I'll close in this direction, and then just keep that spot and go around, opening and closing your tool, and it forms the tube into a little bead. It's quite secure, and it is just a lovely way to crimp. It is magical. Okay, and now what I normally do, because I am using leftover beads, I don't want to lose my crimp tube, I normally separate my quantities when I'm going to do a necklace that pops over my head, so that when I've strung all of this, because this is the length that I want and it's quite long, when I come back around to this side, I haven't run out of beads. So in other words, the front of my necklace is going to look the same right here. So I'm going to sit and separate my quantities of beads into two piles, one for the left side, one for the right side, and that's going to make stringing more pleasant. Okay, I separated everything, and what I decided to do, I'll talk to you a little bit about the design principle here. Since my handmade beads are so busy and colorful and highly textural, and they've taken on different shapes, I didn't want my strung part to be too busy, visually busy. So if I were to just do these like a random mix or alternate all these colors every other bead, it would visually be quite busy and, like, to me, overly colorful, and you wouldn't really see anything, be able to focus on anything. So what I've decided to do is color block my beads that I have. And again, if I were not using leftovers, if I had like strands, I would probably just choose a color. Like this was my favorite, so I put it front and center, these rice shaped purple beads, check glass beads, but that's what I had left. So to make them not so busy looking, I'm doing blocks. So I did a block of 2 gold, 2 gold. My next block is 3 of my faceted gemstones. They're in the purple tones. They're jade faceted rondelles. So I just checked my quantity and I was able to do 3 gold, 3 gold, 3, and so on. And then when I get to the next section, I separated these drugs into 2 and then a gold on either side of the purple rondelle. So there's a little bead station, but these rondelles were pretty much the same color as the drugs. So that is a color block right there. And then let me get a cold. I'm brave. I don't have it clamped off. And then I went into my brighter lilac and then my seed beads, the leftovers of the rondelles. And this part is mostly going to be behind my neck. So it's lovely, but my favorite beads, I kind of focus them down here. And this is about the middle of my length right here where I've stopped. That is about the middle of my length. So I'm going to use the beads that I separated for the other side of my necklace and string down to here and repeat the same thing with my square glass bead and my twisted stainless steel jump ring. And so what I'm going to do now is string in reverse. So I've ended with a gold, so I'm going to come to these faceted jade rondelles and put one of these and a gold and 3 chalk pinks, and I'm just gonna do what I did, just mirror the other side and come down to the front, if that makes sense. This is so fast. This kind of stringing is so fast and easy to do. So I'm just gonna show you what it looks like here, just like that, and I'm going to work my way around to the front. And I just love this necklace. What I love about it is, I said this before, I'm repeating myself, but I love the textile quality mixed with all the colors, mixed with glass, threads, fabric, seed beads. It's just so beautiful. And my intention with this is to wear this with sweaters as we go into cooler weather. It's very lightweight, but I just love the fuzziness of the felt, like to pop over my head. To me, this is just perfect for a sweater or a long sleeve t-shirt. So I'm going to keep stringing and I'll pop back in and show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay, I'm all connected. I absolutely love this. I can't wait to put this in my next try on video. Like I said, I had to take a break because I got so enthused about the way my pieces, my beads were turning out that I sat here too long. But when I took the pause, I also finished the little heart felt pendant, or it could be a bookmarker. As I said, I really like to do things like this for bookmarkers. It would be lovely added in to the beads, like to make a pendant to add on. I could even do that. I could come here with a little chain and make a pendant to add on. But since this is so busy and colorful and I did want earrings, I did this little minimalist pair of stick earrings, and I have done this design before. I will link the video. I used the same, I think the same dollar bead as these came from for these earrings, and did it with seed beads. Oh no, it wasn't dollar bead. I did it with seed beads. I think it was my Beads of the Month club. But at the time I was doing the stick earrings with seed beads, and I was thinking that faceted gemstones would make them so beautiful. So for these, I've used my Purity Beads ball head pins. They're 3-inch. And if you can see this, these are these magical stop crimps that have this little button here, and you close it, you squish it or push it in. And so that's my stopper to keep my gemstone beads. And I have some Purity Beads solid brass anti-tarnish little disc in between, and I just did a little ombre, or again the color blocking. So since my necklace is so busy, I have a more calm, less competitive earrings. And one thing I didn't, there's so many possibilities when you're doing your embroidery and embellishing your beads. One thing I didn't get out, and I forgot to mention, is that bugle beads work absolutely beautifully to create patterns on your pieces. And so I'm going to come back in another video and do another one of these felt heart pendants. I've already chosen a few of the things that will go into it. I have this double rhinestone bead cap for the bottom. I've already chosen a few of the things, and maybe I'll get out some of the silk ribbon that I use for silk ribbon embroidery on this one. I just have a couple of very simple stitches here, the Lazy Daisy stitch, the turkey tracks or feather stitch here, and I had some little cup flowers that I sewed on, and doing the edge is a simple back stitch, that a beaded back stitch basically, and a stack of bead caps, and I just love it. So I'll come back in another video, make another one of these hearts, and then do a project with it, maybe a bookmarker or something. So I hope you'll subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss these extra things when I come back. And I thank you guys so much. Over the weekend I hit 12,000 subscribers. And I've been at this very hard, working like crazy with all my heart for less than 2 years. So my gratitude to all of you for the thumbs up and the hypes and the views and the sweet comments, the supportive, kind, positive comments that you leave. My heart is full of gratitude. So it's on my mind. So I wanted to say thank you for that. And in the description box under this video, you have to tap more under the video title, and then find the more again to reveal the whole box. I will put links to as much of my supplies as I can find. I really pulled things from leftover boxes and leftover earrings and leftover threads, as you saw my little bag of scraps. But I will link as much as I can, the felt beads, the felt hearts. I'll link as much as I can. And I'll put a link to the Potomac Treasure Box. That's where I got the rondelles from. And Dollar Bead, I have a discount code for them. And anything else that I can think of. Also my other video for making beads too. So if you missed any of them and you want to see the different ways that you can make beads, that will be there for you. So I thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a wonderful fall, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, friends.